Hi, my name's Reed Silverne. The name of this show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal worker, retired, and proud of it. Today for me, it's January 14th and it's Friday. For you, it'll probably be Thursday the 20th or any one of 2 or 3 weeks afterward. So anything I say today is probably going to be extremely obsolete, almost irritatingly so by the time you hear it. What I usually do and my usual system over here is to, first I'm going to do a spin of the earth. That just shows the marvelous and playful non-professionality of my show. And usually I talk about subjects that are just so obscure that they'll be equally irrelevant in 3 weeks as they are today. However, for me, it being Friday, Saturday we had what the wall-to-wall news is calling the tragedy in Tucson. A madman, Jared Lee Loughner, murdered 6 people and attempted to murder our Congresswoman, Gabrielle Giffords. And she is my Congresswoman, as I am in that district, District 8. So it's been a terrible time. The little girl, 9 years old, was murdered. And the coverage is wall to wall. I think that NBC alone sent 40 or 50 people out to Tucson just to cover it. The day before yesterday, the president came out and he did a very, very heartfelt and I thought very well thought out and neutral, respectful speech. And after that speech, I was proud of him and I was proud to be an American. And I think that he made a point that we are Americans and we have to stick together, especially in a situation like this. So that's not the only thing I'm going to say about it, but I think that a lot of people, especially this week, if you do see it in this time period, are pretty much heartbroken about the whole thing. It hits me pretty closely because the previous Saturday, we went to the Chinese restaurant in that very complex. By the way, it's called China Phoenix, and I'm sure they're desperate to have people start going there again. And they make the best dim sum in all of Tucson. And usually I don't come out and say something like that about a specific business, but I was in that particular business the week before. Probably about the same time that this event occurred, a week later. So that's part of my stomping ground. I won't say I go there every day, but I certainly go there once or twice a month to that particular complex. So to have this kind of event happen so close to me is pretty shocking, and I was pretty shocked. And I think our whole community, even though probably after 6 days of wall-to-wall, 24/7 coverage, are getting a little tired of hearing about our community on the national news, that we're all a little bit shell-shocked. And that's basically the word for it. I don't like to not say something on the show, but it's just a showstopper. I mean, it's impossible to really show how people are feeling about this. And even more so, even closer to my own home and to my own area, the shooter, Jared Lee Loughner, he went to the same high school that my boy does now. He went to years ago. Pima College is a mile and a half away. Pima College was so worried about his behavior that they literally threw him out and said, you can't come here without an evaluation. And A lot of people have criticized Pima College for not having him arrested, although they did call the campus cops out against him about 5 or 6 times. But I don't see, I suspect that this might have occurred there if they hadn't acted, because he was writing very, very angry posts about Pima Community College. So what's this all about? And of course, it started this gigantic thing, you know, left, right, Republican, Democrat, and everything else about the public discourse and our people really kind of picking the scab that causes crazy people to do crazy things. And I think that I'm not even sure they're that far right, but the Fox News right has basically been very, very defensive. And of course, we have Sarah Palin, who thinks this whole thing is about her, and that anybody who has a problem with her basically putting gun sights on different districts and mentioning Gabrielle Giffords' name probably would not have been a big issue if Gabrielle Giffords at the time hadn't gone on TV and said, you know, there could be consequences to this. So Sarah Palin, of course, assumed that this was all about her, and she put out a really bizarre Facebook TV clip. I don't know how to describe it, in her own home with a flag behind her and everything, like she's still in charge of a state, basically saying that it's about me and there's a blood libel against me and so on and so forth. I don't think she knows what those words mean. And what they really mean is an accusation against the Jews in a town in Russia that caused the Cossacks to come in and burn all the homes of the Jews down and kill them all. So I'm not sure she even knew what it meant, but it really showed that she felt that this whole thing was about her, and it's not. But we're stuck with a situation. We have a madman. And is the madman, was he affected by politics? And of course, everybody now is backing off to the lone gunman theory, the same theory that they had for the Virginia Tech shooter that killed 32 people in a college. And I have no doubt that he is a lone gunman. But was he influenced? He wasn't influenced by Fox News Network, but he was influenced. And he was a regular contributor and watcher of these very, very right-wing, sometimes racialist, sovereign citizen movement websites. If you look at what seemed like they were crazy ramblings on his YouTube posts and so on and so forth, in actuality, you can trace those right back to a guy named David Wynn Miller, who is a sovereign citizen theologist, I don't know what you want to call it, who believed that all government is evil and that America, before the Civil War, all white men had a were sovereign citizens, that they didn't have to follow any law at all. Now, anybody who actually knows about the Old West in the West, but also the earlier settlements in the East, and of course the first settlers across the Appalachians were Kentucky and Tennessee, know that there was plenty of law there, and a lot of people were strung up by the local sheriffs without any thought whatsoever. So the idea that there was no law and that every white male was a sovereign citizen is just ridiculous. Anybody who knows anything about the law knows that that's simply not true. And even under Washington, he mobilized a militia and sent a bunch of militiamen out to western Pennsylvania, and that was the Whiskey Rebellion, and hung a whole bunch of people. Captured them and hung them, and then let a whole bunch of other people go as long as they paid their taxes. And that's, of course, the origin of moonshiners, that basically moonshiners don't want to pay federal tax. So this whole thing that there was no law and that Americans were sovereign citizens, or at least white Americans were, is garbage. It's simply not true. Anybody who's knows the history of the Old West has heard about Judge Roy Bean, and if you asserted your sovereign citizen status in front of Judge Roy Bean, he would have strung you up with a rope necktie, and you would have been sovereign for about 10 or 20 seconds while you were swinging with your feet dangling. So was he influenced? Yes. He actually put his posts in the same script. The guy called it the truth language, I believe, and syntax that this guy had. And so he was influenced. So the idea that nobody influenced him and that he just went crackers and basically was a stalker, it's partially true, but it's not completely true. Now, is there any evidence that he was influenced by the Tea Party or influenced by Fox News Network or influenced by election ads? No, there's nothing in there. There's a whole bunch of bizarre stuff, but there doesn't seem to be any evidence of that. Was he influenced by anti-government websites? Did he think that our money was a plot against him because it's not backed by gold? That the government had mind control and that was taking over his brain? Yeah, I mean, that is what he thought. And he got a lot of that conspiracy stuff from places that basically sell that kind of thing. And so I don't know whether anybody wants to do anything. I think they don't. I think that we're all happier just with a lone gunman having gone mad at a subway, a Safeway, and attacking a congresswoman that he had been stalking perhaps for a number of years. We can all forget about it and go back to our regular life, mourn the dead, and just go on and go back to politics as usual. Now, politics is not really going back to usual. The head of Fox News Network is a fellow named Ailes, and he's an ex-Reagan staffer or advisor, I believe. And he basically called in all of his commentators and said, it's time to tone it down over here. And, you know, we won, and I've had it with all of this really incredibly hostile, tyrant, tyrannical government, and so on and so forth. So we'll see how long that lasts. And even Glenn Beck has toned it down. And, you know, fortunately, not too many people watch my show, but I want to encourage him to continue to tone it down. And I think that calling people traitors, calling for people's heads, as has been very, very common on those shows, talking about stringing people up, talking about the government becoming tyrannical because they pass a health care law or any kind of law. Basically, the Obama administration is pretty much straight on. They've done a lot of things that Bush did. They've continued to do a lot of things that Bush did. There are a few divergences. Of course, we have to remember that when you talk about a takeover of the health industry, Bush went and took 1/3 to 1/2 of all pharmaceutical sales and had it bought through Medicare as a Medicare benefit directly from a single-payer government, which is Medicare. So you know, if the government is trying to take over the private space of industry, as some of these guys are saying, you know, both sides are doing it. I don't see anybody who's not doing it. And Obama basically worked out a deal to save, I think, the health insurance industry by guaranteeing them a nationwide market. There's a lot of things that the healthcare industry doesn't like, and among them is, well, gee, we can't go in there and cancel your policy when you get cancer because you didn't say that you were allergic to moss on your original application and then not pay. We can't bait and switch. We can't not cover you when we've covered you. We can't refuse to cover you because somebody in your family is sick. And there were a couple other things like allowing your kids, especially during this terrible recession, to stay on your health insurance for an extra 6 or 7 years. Ironically, people who are between 18 and 26 are the healthiest people in society, and the insurance industry, which now has to offer this increase, has been doubling people's health insurance when they were teens and children, which is a much more expensive time to cover. They were just part of the family plan for the health insurance. So the insurance industry seems intent on making things expensive. I could go on about Blue Cross Blue Shield in California, which doesn't have a lot of state laws controlling the insurance industry, who tried to raise all insurance rates by 59%. With absolutely no evidence. In fact, there's been some evidence that health spending has slowed down and has not increased. So, other than that, with not withdrawing, but bringing our troops back in the barracks after Iraq has been stabilized, and leaving Iraq without the Al-Qaeda in charge of it or Iran in charge of it, with an elected government, staying there and finishing the job, basically. Finishing the job in Afghanistan and not cutting and running. Probably will stay until 2014. Supporting the military to some extent. Is he that radically different from the previous Republican administration? And I have to say, I don't think so. I think he's just standard, continuation of most policies, with the exception of health care and the fact that he's a Democrat. He certainly, as the last lame duck session showed, willing to cut taxes and increase the deficit, which is exactly what the Republicans wanted to do. So to say that he's a tyrant or he's leading us to socialism or all the other things that these talk shows have been hitting him with, I think is ridiculous. I think that he's not that different from Bush. I think there's a lot of people on the other side that don't like him because he's not that different from Bush. And I think that people in the center don't really have that big a problem because he's not that different from every other president that we've had for the last three or four terms, and neither was Clinton. So, basically that's the bottom line there. Meanwhile, the president came to the U of A, and I thought that he just had a beautiful speech. And again, this is going to be pretty boring stuff in about 3 weeks. But I think it's important that we listen to it, especially since this show is called Fed Pride. And he said, we should be civil because we want to live up to the example of public servants like John Roll and Gabby Giffords, who knew first and foremost that we were all Americans and that we can question each other's ideas without questioning each other's love of country, and that our task, working together, is to constantly widen the circle of our concern so that we bequeath the American dream to future generations. Now, the reason I bring this up is because Judge Roll was a federal judge who was shot in the incident and killed. And Gabby Giffords, of course, was my congressman and a lot of yours. And one of the other casualties who was killed, Mr. Zimmerman, was her aide. All worked for the federal government. And I've gotten a lot of guff from a lot of people over my 33-year career, now that my career's over, about the government is terrible, everything the government does is inefficient, how can you possibly be our oppressor and all this other stuff. The fact of the matter is that we have a constitutional government, and the executive branch of government, and of course in the judiciary, which is Judge Roll, and the legislative, which is Gabby Giffords, are just carrying out the wishes of the Congress and the president that you have elected. And that is a legitimate government. You elected it. You elected Obama. Even if you voted for the other guy, he's the president of all of us. You elected a Republican Congress, and even if you're a Democrat and you didn't vote for the Republican Congress, they're your Congress and they're making your laws. And the laws that they make, which are reviewed for constitutionality by federal judges like Judge Roll, are legitimate. And this entire government is legitimate. If you want the banks to steal from people, then elect a Congress and elect a president that wants no oversight of banks, and the government and government workers will be happy not to regulate the banks. And then if the banks steal from you, and that's what you want, that'll be great. If you want the banks to not steal from you, and you elect people that pass laws that set up the SEC and the CFTC and some other organizations whose job is to keep you from being defrauded, the federal employees are happy to protect you from having banks steal from you. It's as simple as that. So if you're angry because rich people have to pay taxes, well, you now have a Congress that's happy to go into deficit and reduce taxes for wealthy people, which is great, and I'm for it. I know people from the IRS, and the IRS are happy not to collect taxes from somebody that the Congress doesn't want taxes collected from. So you've got to realize that people like Judge Roll, Gabby Giffords, Zimmerman, people from the people who work for the Defense Department, people who work for the IRS, the HHS, Social Security Administration, all these places, they are your neighbors. They are doing the job that your elected officials have asked them to do. The whole system is legitimate. And on top of that, you can change it. And you just did. You just got rid of Democratic House of Representatives and put Republicans in charge of the House of Representatives. You didn't replace the Democratic Senate, but you could have. And they were, the Democratic majority is only 3 people. So we change governments peaceably all the time. However, a lot of policies don't change. They stay the same because some of our interests stay the same. We don't want Al-Qaeda attacking us. We don't want pirates to take over the seas and disrupt our trade. We don't want, banks to issue derivatives that are a bunch of frauds and that crash our economy and steal from us. There's a lot of policies that do remain the same. We want an FBI. We want them to protect us from predators and from counterfeiters and things like that. We want a Secret Service to protect our president. There's a lot of things that remain the same and that don't change, and that's continuity. And I think we need more continuity, and we need to respect the federal people that are around us, whether we like this particular government, whether we like our particular politicians. We need to be civil, and we need to treat them as neighbors. And if we want to elect somebody else, fine, let's do that. My name is Reed Silver, the name of this show is Fed Pride. The reason it's called Fed Pride is because I'm a federal employee, retired. Thank you for watching.